it's said that status sales are there because it's a free market.
Yeah.
Anyone can buy a company. A club is a company. You
Yeah.
can buy a company and sell a company. But for me, what it does is that it dilutes value.
Yeah.
Because for one, you've got teams like Betway who are 99 years old on the verge of turning 100 and then disappear.
Gone.
Bloomsenders.
Anyone who is a fan of that team. So anyone who goes to Wits University or would have been a Wits University fan, would have poured money back into the league, etc. They no longer have any interest. Bloom Celtic, you disenfranchise the entire Free State community.
Yeah.
Right now, when you take Marumo Kalants from Limpopo and you
to
move them to
Bloemfontein.
Bloemfontein, people who don't even speak the same language are now supporting the same team.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But this is the way that our football works. And in my opinion, I think it's the wrong call because, again, sponsors don't want to sponsor those teams.
Absolutely.
They have nothing to link onto. There's no audience that they can... If a team's going to wake up tomorrow and be moved, Chief, I'm not going to put 30 or 100 million.
Yo, what's happening? What's happening? It's another episode of the All Rounders channel. Baba. Not just podcast, but we are on Apple and Spotify podcasts. Sibuyile, we are back there.
Every pod.
Yes.
We're not there anymore.
We have upgraded. We have upgraded levels. It's another episode of the All Rounders channel with myself, Pilasane Siklaba, and of course, Cape Town's very own, Langa's very own,
755.
No, Pongola. That's him. Nons, today, you know what? You and I don't understand money.
No. You speak for yourself, Chief.
Okay, I do not understand money. Okay. I don't understand money, especially in sport.
Yes, sport.
There's a lot of money in sport. And that's why we needed to find somebody that understands these things. The money, how it flows into sport, how it's made, how it goes out.
And on top of that,
Yes.
we've been hunting after this man.
Man, his calendar's
every
full.
time he's posting.
Calendar's full.
Hey.
Huh?
Hey, gents. No, man. I'm always...
Wait.
He's introducing himself in our
We
show.
haven't introduced you. We just talk there. Okay. No, but you probably know him on social platforms as Cash in Sport, which I think is a very great name. It's a great name. It's like the sports joke. You must call yourself what you are and what you know.
Like the all-rounders.
Yeah, like the all-rounders. Yes, please. It gives us great pleasure to welcome Mr. Cash in Sport himself, Nqobile Ndlovu. Nqobs, really great to have you on the show, man. Like we've been trying to get you on. We know schedules clash a lot. You're busy. We are also trying to find our way.
Trying to find our money.
Our money as well. We're also looking for a sponsor, by the way. Really good to have you on the show. And I think let's just kick it off right from the beginning, man. Like, there's so much to ask, but we'll ask about the most, probably the biggest thing that's happening right now in sport, and that's the new Premier League naming rights, with DStv stepping away from a 5-year contract. Yes, we are going straight there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 5-year sponsorship with DStv and the Premier Soccer League. That's ended in 4 years. Betway has now stepped in for 3 years. And I heard from the press conference that Dr. Ivan Koza, the chairman of the PSL, was saying that it's worth, guys, it also just breaks my heart to hear these numbers.
Why does it break your heart?
900 million rand.
Are you thinking you're in the wrong space, or what do you
Yeah,
see?
because I want that 900 million rand. You've spoken about it extensively.
Yeah.
What is it? What happened behind the scenes to get to a point where the PSL has sort of parted ways and not parted ways with DStv and welcome Betway?
Yeah, so first up, thanks, gents, for having me on the pod. It's taken a while, but geez,
We are here.
to arrive on a banger of an occasion. There's been an announcement now that the PSL will take up a sponsor, will be named the Betway Premiership for the upcoming season. So how did we get here? So if you've been, you guys have been following me, but if the viewers have been following me for a while, they would have seen the hints and the there's something that you can say and you
Yeah.
can't say
Yeah.
outright
Yeah.
because things are happening in the background. But
Yeah.
sport is an ever moving and an ever evolving space.
Yeah.
Last year, conversations already had started within the MultiChoice group
Yeah.
around whether they would want to renew these rights.
Yes.
They were going into their final year, and just as in many other sports, as in football, your final year, you're open to offers.
Yeah. Even
generally.
personal contracts
And
as
personal
well.
contracts, exactly. Because generally, if you're going into your final year, you hold less value. You have to renegotiate. Because you don't want to get to the end of the contract and then only start negotiating at that point. So I have it on very good authority that within the MultiChoice group, they felt like they were overexposed. Financially speaking, they were in a very tough position because MultiChoice in the previous year had lost about 2 billion rand.
Yeah.
And they were not looking good in terms of what was coming for the next financial year.
Yeah.
And we now know that they lost over 4 billion rand. So that loss doubled. So in the last 2 financial years, they've lost 6 billion rand. There was a large subscriber decline. So within the group already, there were discussions to say, guys, we're a little bit overexposed. Just in terms of a breakdown of the money that they were paying the league. Just for broadcasting the league alone, at least 600 million rand, right? In the last financial year, it was about 614 or something to that effect. They were paying for the naming rights of the league. So on top of the 600 million, they were paying 140 million a year. So already that's over 700. And then they were paying for the other 2 smaller competitions somewhere in the region of, so in total, they were paying around about 800 million rand a year to the league. And that exposure was, I mean, if you're losing 2 billion and you're paying 800 million to one competition, it's a lot of money. So within the group already, they were thinking about how do we reduce exposure? Do we end this, one of them at least? They didn't want to let go of the broadcast rights of the league. Because the broadcast rights of the league are valuable to them. They have the highest numbers in terms of viewership rates. Is the PSL. It gets far higher viewership than the EPL. It gets higher viewership than rugby, anything else. So they didn't want to let go of it. And contrary to popular belief, I'll touch on something separate. They also didn't want to let go of the CAF rights because, again, continental competition gets far higher. The viewership of the last AFCON was the highest, most watched sports event on SuperSport in the last year. Wow. Higher than the World Cup.
Rugby World Cup.
Higher than the Rugby World Cup.
Wow.
Higher than...
That makes sense, though.
Higher than any other bigger competition that they had last year. AFCON was, even though they got the rights late,
I was about to
it
say
was
that.
the highest viewed sports content on SuperSport in the last higher than the Rugby World Cup. So, contrary to popular belief, MultiChoice understands where the value lies. But in any case, so MultiChoice decided, I think early this year, that they were not going to renew and that they were going to go and, if they had two choices, finish the year or terminate and pay a termination fee and just walk away. They decided, not last week, as the media would have you know, they decided already early on this year that they were not going to continue. They informed the league. They went into negotiations, which is why you would have heard the chairman say he went into multiple meetings with Hollywood Bets and Betway, etc., etc. They'd been speaking about this for quite some time. A 900 million rand agreement doesn't take a couple of weeks. Even before the clubs were asked to not print their shirts and all of that, they already knew that MultiChoice is not renewing. It's unfortunate for the league that it leaked.
How does it leak?
Well, there's people with vested interest in it leaking. Let me say that. I won't mention names, but there are people with vested interest in a leak because what it does is that it accelerates things. You get a bit of clarity around what's happening. It exposes some people. Chaos is good in some
organized
for
chaos.
Organized chaos.
Organized chaos.
So unfortunately for the league, it leaked. Then they were forced to go into this sort of rushed situation. according to my understanding, the league was informed quite early on in the year. They sought other sponsorship. Betway was the one that had come on strongly.
Yeah.
Hollywood Bets, I know, had been in the conversation.
Yeah.
But they were uncomfortable with the league's rules with regards to sports betting and sports betting sponsorship,
Yes.
even as with regards to what the chairman says, and all due respect to the chairman. But I know for a fact that that Hollywood Bet were not comfortable with the current betting and sponsorship rules,
Yeah.
and they decided to not continue.
Yeah.
And Betway said, "Yeah, we'll take it on." Betway courted Kaizer Chiefs 3 years ago. They were in a long-standing up and down with Kaizer Chiefs as to whether they want to be the front of shirt partner. Kaizer Chiefs declined that courtship
Why?
because there was something coming down the road.
Ah, okay.
The S1.
Kaizer Chiefs then took up the SuperSport Bet sponsorship, as did Orlando Pirates. Generally, those two teams do things in pairs.
Yeah.
If you would notice,
Yeah.
Vodacom in
yeah.
pairs, etc., etc. Things happen in pairs. So that happened. Betway stepped away, but they continued trying to find a way in. They potentially looked at sponsoring a competition for the league, which would have been the Betway Cup.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they came to this point now. And the last week, what happened in the last week is really immaterial. It makes it look like it was a rush job. It was a bit of a rush job because the league only is supposed
Has
to
to
start
start,
soon.
3rd
But
of August.
if it wasn't for other things happening, they would have gone through their normal processes. They were meant to announce the sponsorship last week on Friday, but that didn't come to be. And we are where we are now.
I'm interested because, like you said, if someone is going to give you almost R1 billion, surely they must be after something. And we now know that it's obviously Betway. And Betway is involved in South African cricket. Is involved in the Springboks. What is it for Betway that they are willing to give almost R1 billion to football in this country?
Betway wants to be the dominant sports betting company, not just in South Africa, but on the continent. They are already, at the present moment, active in 7 African countries, and I know quite well that they're active in trying to open up other African markets, looking towards maybe doubling that presence and being continental, top to bottom in terms of spread. Now there's other betting companies who have a large presence. You look at the likes of Hollywood Bets, who are active everywhere. They put they everything that they do is
everywhere in Durban.
is
Hey,
Hollywood
Devin, I
Bets.
wanted to say also.
Everywhere in Durban.
So if you want to separate yourself from the rest, and kind of push them out, you go for a sponsorship like this because football is the biggest sport in the country. So Betway, by virtue of having done this, would have a presence on a rugby shirt with the Springboks, the biggest property. Cricket, Proteas, Betway SA20, the biggest properties. And now football, the most watched sport in the country. So they have presence everywhere where they essentially lock everyone else out. By virtue of doing this, Hollywood Bets can now not enter the PSL as a sponsor.
At all.
Because the PSL works on exclusivity. So the moment you have a category sponsor who sponsors the league, you cannot have a team who has a sponsor who is in that same category. So Golden Arrows, Kaizer Chiefs and Pirates will keep the sponsors that they have in 10Bet and SuperSport Bet, but Hollywood Bets is out. That's how football works. They may enter, as you know, Hollywood Bets sponsors the Sharks and so on. So rugby doesn't have an exclusivity agreement in the same way that football has. So that's why Betway wants to do it. They want to be the only name that people know in terms of a betting sense in the country.
900 million is obviously over 3 years, so that means 300 million
a year
per season. That's quite a lot of money. And I know, I'm a very much a novice in terms of how money flows within those spaces, but 300 million rand per season for naming rights. What does that do for the PSL, not only from a revenue perspective, but also just for making it possibly it probably was the richest on the continent, but how much more now does that number and exposure and attractiveness of the Premier Soccer League on the continent and possibly beyond it?
Yeah. It's a difficult question to answer because the league itself hasn't released financial results since 2019-20. So we don't know exactly how much money they're making. We can speculate, and that 800 million rand number that I gave you was from 2022.
Yeah.
I haven't a very good idea of what 2023 looked like, but
Yeah.
I can't say that number until I have
concrete.
and generally that's the way that I try to work, is I don't mention anything unless I know for a fact that it's happening.
Yeah.
So on the rest of the continent, it's even worse. You have a lot of leagues who don't release any financial results at all, so you don't know. So it would be pure speculation for us to say that the PSL is definitely the biggest league in the world. When you see leagues like the Botola League in Morocco, where Coach Rulani goes, and the types of fees that they pay for players, it's difficult to say without a shadow of a doubt that the PSL,
It's the
financially
biggest,
speaking, is the biggest league. Although, I mean, for all intents and purposes, in terms of infrastructure and so on and so on, South Africa, Morocco, and Egypt are probably the three biggest. So I won't say that the PSL, financially speaking, is the biggest league, because it would be nice if we get some financial results, compare, and then, but in any case. But what does it do, as your question? For one, it would be good to know also how exactly is that 300 million broken down? Because as I said, the previous naming rights agreement with MultiChoice for the DStv Premiership was around about 140 million rand.
So it's double now.
It's a big premium. If it is indeed that MultiChoice will continue to sponsor the other competitions, and this is purely for the naming rights of the league, and paying double what was previously paid, that's a massive amount. What it would do for the teams, one is that there would be more money available all around within the league. Two is that possibly the grants would increase towards the teams, and then towards potentially increasing, which I think would be a better thing to do, would be to increase the grants in the second division. And not in the Premiership, because the gap between the Premiership and the second division is
massive.
It's astronomically big. So you need to get those teams a little bit, in a better position to be able to afford players and to survive. Three, I think what it would do also is that it would just shore up the finances of the league in general. Because it's quite well known that you have a situation where teams are mostly on the brink of collapse. There's a lot of teams on the brink of collapse. A lot of teams are struggling. If the league were to put some money together and have sort of like a fund available, it would just allow them to be a little bit more financially secure. So those are the three things I think that the league will be looking to do.
Just a follow up, Nos, before you go, and I know you speak about the second division of the league, which I think Glad Africa still sponsors.
No, it's now sponsored by Motsepe Foundation.
Motsepe Foundation, there's no clash in terms of the money that they receive from Betway to be able to be funneled down to that league. And is it a matter of we as the Premier League decide where this money goes, regardless of who holds what naming rights below what we have here?
So South Africa doesn't do what are called parachute payments. In the Premier League in England, that it's called parachute payments. So where the broadcast money and all the money that the league makes at the top structure then gets flown down. It flows down to support the teams in the second division. And it's in a structured way where the teams who were relegated would get more money for some reason than the rest of the teams. Because generally what happens is that when you get relegated, you go down with your players, but your players stay at the same salary band as the guys in the top.
Same contracts.
So how do you maintain those players and allow for the team to continue to function? So you pay them more than the rest of the teams, but then the rest of the teams always complain that, but these guys are relegated. They're in the same level as us. But in any case, it is what it is. So we don't do that in South Africa. The DStv Premiership or the Betway Premiership now will pay for the rights and the grants of the guys at the top. The sponsor at the bottom pays the grants for the guys at the bottom. The league doesn't then drop that money down to the bottom. And support those teams, although they do in because I mean the money is paid to the league. But generally speaking, the 600 million that that MultiChoice paid to broadcast the league, the DStv Premiership is paid as a grant to
Clubs in the DStv
to
Premiership.
clubs in the DStv Premiership. The clubs at the bottom do get a grant, but generally that 600 million, if you take it, it's 30 million per team per season. Multiply it across, it'll give you about 600, and then the other guys at the bottom will get like 500,000. It's
From 30 million to 500.
No, but remember, let me clarify the 500,000. So a team in the PSL gets 2 million rand.
For grant.
Per team per month.
Yeah.
Right, as a grant. The teams in the Motsepe Foundation
1.5
would
difference.
get about 500,000. So that's the difference.
Yeah.
And then you expect the teams to then also be able to compete with the teams in the DStv. It's just not possible. So even when you have that promotion relegation playoff, it's
a bit
chalk
of
and
a-
cheese.
Yeah.
I want to know. I mean, you mentioned something really important, saying some of the Premierships teams are in the brink of collapse, and we've seen the status thing that happens in South African football, which is frustrating for follower how teams can change.
Yeah.
But then you compare in terms of money wise. Cricket is more stable as a sport in this country. Rugby is more stable as a sport, but yet football earns, like the Premiership side at least, get more money. But yet, why is that then such instability when you're still getting so much backing from these sponsorship deals, and yet teams can't seem to sustain? I mean, Morocco Swallows was one of the cases that happened last season. How is that possible then when there's so much being invested in football?
So the business models are fundamentally different between cricket, rugby, and football in this country. So rugby, as an example, there's a certain number of franchises, there's a certain number of teams.
Yeah.
There's generally no promotion relegation. You play, and that's basically it. I mean, you get your Griquas and your other sides, but generally, if you're playing in the URC, you're playing in the URC guaranteed. You're not getting out.
Yeah.
Whereas in the PSL, and there's also a central structure that sort of manages money.
Yeah.
So SA Rugby, for instance, will get all the sponsors who sponsor SA Rugby, right? And then the individual franchises will get their own individual sponsors.
Yes.
But then SA Rugby will also filter down money
Into those franchises.
Into those franchises. That's why when Western Province Rugby Union, for example, goes into financial troubles, who rescues them? It's Saru who comes and rescues them. They're not then left into the doldrums. In the PSL, if you go into financial trouble,
You
peace,
are on
bro.
your own.
You're on your own.
You are on your own.
You know? So that's where the fundamental difference lies,
Yeah.
is that there's a central structure. SA Rugby funnels money into one place and then they pour it in, and then the individual franchises also do their job within the structure. There's collective bargaining agreements where there's a union that takes care of player salaries, which is called,
My Players
in
Union.
rugby it's called My Players, and then in cricket it's also very similar. There's a central bargaining structure. They know exactly which players are earning what. There's no way where things can just go awry and all over the place.
So-
Plus, then finances and stuff are tracked. Yes, you never see the finances of each individual franchise, but you see the Saru finances every year. They release them publicly, so you know, and you generally know roughly how much each franchise is spending on player salaries and so on. So it's very structured in that way. It's not to say that the PSL doesn't have a structure. It's just their structure is very different. Where the PSL is a mother body on its own. The franchises essentially, link into the PSL, but they're essentially very self-sufficient. They run on their own. Apart from the grant, that's it. So yeah, I do not like status sales. But it's said that status sales are there because it's a free market.
Yeah.
Anyone can buy a company. A club is a company. You can buy a company and sell a company. But for me, what it does is that it dilutes value. Because for one, you've got teams like Betway, who are 99 years old on the verge of turning 100 and then disappear.
Gone.
Bloom Sandleton.
Anyone who is a fan of that team. So anyone who goes to Wits University or would have been a Wits University fan, would have poured money back into the league, etc. They no longer have any interest. Bloom Celtic, you disenfranchise the entire Free State community. Right now, when you take Marumo Galants from Limpopo and you
to
move them to
Bloemfontein.
Bloemfontein, people who don't even speak the same language are now supporting the same team.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But this is the way that our football works. And in my opinion, I think it's the wrong call because, again, sponsors don't want to sponsor those teams.
Absolutely.
They have nothing to link onto. There's no audience that they can. If a team's going to wake up tomorrow and be moved, Chief, I'm not going to put 30 or 100 million. If I
money's
were
gone.
Betway, it wouldn't make any sense for me to do that because you have no guarantee that in a week's time that team will be where it is. You have no guarantee that those fans that you link into by virtue of the sponsorship and want to
be
activate
there.
on will be there.
Yeah.
So how do you continue to sponsor the team? And it just cascades down.
Yeah.
It's a problem throughout the structure.
Yeah. I look at league status sales as obviously something that should be eradicated. Does it fit into the league's sort of business IP to get rid of it, to put a rule and a law to say, listen, this can't happen to an esteemed league like ours where there's status sales almost every season, and then it sort of
That's the
dilutes
league's,
what we'd want to do.
What I just said now is the league's current position. The league has been, and I think there's a couple of journalists who asked. I'm not a journalist, by the way. I'm just a person
money
who works
man.
in sport
Yeah,
and
money
is
man.
concerned about the business side of sport. So I've asked this question of journalists, and I know there are journalists who have asked the chairman directly this question. The chairman's and the league's position is that a club is a financial entity of its own. It's a company. It can be sold like anyone else. However, they do have the power to change it.
Yeah.
The board of governors could meet, and I can tell you now that there are members within the board who are not 100% sold on this matter of status sales. So they could change it, just as they could change what happens to the money. They could say, well, we're instituting a new structure where money will flow down from the top to the bottom. And let me just correct myself a little bit. It's not like the money that's made at the top doesn't flow down at all. It's just there's not enough of it. And the Motsepe Foundation Championship, yes, the grants are there, but it's just not enough. So the league could change the status sales resolution at any point. It's just as they could change the betting resolution at any point if they wanted to.
On that also, because I did hear the chairman, Dr. Ivan Khoza, saying that there is now deliberations from the board of governors who have the power to change, and not the exco of PSL, to change constitution and put in new laws and stuff like that. Players now and coaches and any other sort of stakeholder in football are obviously, you can't place bets, or active players, you can't place bets on whatever's happening in the league and matches in the league. That is going to be a point of discussion for the next AGM, which I think is in August.
I think he misspoke there. The rules around players and betting has already been in the NSL handbook. Players can't bet. The officials linked to those players can't bet. It's not even just the NSL handbook. It's in FIFA statutes.
Yes.
You cannot bet. You cannot, if you're an official, you cannot be involved in betting. It's exactly the same reason as why Samuel Eto'o was taken to sanction very recently by CAF. It's not new. I think the chairman misspoke if that's what he said. It's not new. It's been in existence forever that players can't bet, and it's in FIFA's rules, and the PSL is just by virtue of being affiliated with SAFA is part of the FIFA structure. So that's not new. What I think the chairman was saying is that the rules around betting would be discussed, or were discussed properly by the board of governors. And they will be clarified to make it clearer. It's not clear at the moment. And that's also part of the reason why. Even though he would say that David Mokhashwa and others did not comply, it's because the sponsor refused to sign. Because the rules were a bit murky in terms of
players.
Not necessarily players. The issue with Swallows, let me clarify this one, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding as to why Swallows didn't get a betting sponsorship. There are clauses in the betting rules handbook for the PSL One of them has to do with data. Betting companies are big data engines,
Yeah.
right? The data that you receive, so basically how are odds arrived at? If you go into a betting site, it will say odds of 1.35 for this team and
Yep.
2.4 what for that other team.
Yeah.
The reason you get those odds is because they would get a data engine,
Yeah.
data engineers and teams who would look at a whole bunch of matches
Yeah.
and look at outcomes and results. The first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, how many corners, how many yellow cards, how many red cards, etc., etc.
sure.
You can bet on up to 100 outcomes in a match,
Yeah.
right? They take all of that data
Yeah.
and they put it into an algorithm which says the probability of this happening is this, and
Yeah.
the probability of that happening is that. That's how you get to the odds
Yeah.
that they produce for you.
Yeah.
Now, for you as the PSL to then say, you can only get your data that feeds into your odds about the PSL from us as the PSL, makes it problematic, because how do you guarantee that the data that the PSL gives you is accurate and is enough for you to feed your odds book for your betting company?
Yeah.
That's what is problematic. Number two is that a previous rule in the and I'm not sure if, because this rule is still there.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they removed it or not. One of the other rules stated that the teams would have to share their revenue from betting, from bets placed on the PSL with the PSL on top of the tax that they pay.
Ha!
So I don't know whether this rule was removed or not. And if you want, for the purposes of this episode, I'll send you a screenshot of that little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
But that's the other rule, and the betting companies refuse to sign it, because it's like, no, but this doesn't make sense. We already pay tax. Why should we be paying extra?
Now we must share it with you again.
Now this is the question as to whether I would assume Betway would have signed the same, because it's the same book, it's the same rules for everyone.
Yeah.
And I would assume that the other betting companies would have signed, which is 10Bet and Supersport Bet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but yeah.
I'm gonna try to understand. I mean, we see more and more betting companies being involved in our sport, and I mean, we've seen the cases of Ivan Toney and the Premiership, Sandro Tonali, and it's becoming more and more an issue for players. As much as we're saying there are rules and regulations and all that stuff, but at what point now are the leagues, these clubs, when they're agreeing with these sponsorship, also putting players in difficult situations? I'm not saying as a player you go out and looking, but like now the exposure to these betting companies, how much is that helping players as well in these modern times where it's so, I mean, they all have apps.
Yeah.
It's so easy, and some of it could be quick pick.
Yep.
Maybe you didn't even see there's a game that you are potentially are involved in, or in your sporting or the game that you're involved in. So how much of that now is also starting to become an issue with all these betting companies being involved in the sport?
I'll answer you. Well, I'll ask I think the question that you're angling towards is betting sponsorship problematic, and does it lead us to a point where we could potentially have match fixing or match manipulation? Because that's the technical term, is sort of manipulating the outcome of a match.
Yeah.
So I'll answer it in two parts. How does match manipulation work, and am I worried about it? Match manipulation, firstly, I'll say categorically, I'm not worried about match manipulation. The reason being, betting companies, in their mandates and in their terms of existence, their licensing regulations, have to comply with certain licensing rules where they have to monitor bets and bet activity, right? And they have to monitor who bets, to what extent. They have to do KYC is know your customer, so customers have to provide documentation in terms of who they are.
Okay.
So they would be able to see if a player is betting. They should be able to see. However, players can get around this by things such as your family member or
Friend.
whomever, which is similar to what would have happened. I think that's what happened with Ivan Toney. Sandro Tonali, I think, was just outright crazy Italian.
Being a delinquent.
You know? But that's how match manipulation works. And they are data engines even beyond the betting companies, because the betting companies not only have licensing requirements for the country that they're in, they also have global risk engines that they feed into that protect them because all betting companies globally feed into the same risk engines, and they can flag and say, we've picked up something strange here. Have you guys seen it, etc., etc. That's how you pick up syndicates. Now, it's very difficult for a player to manipulate a match. Very difficult, because that player, right, would have to do something in the match, say to people that I'm going to do something, place an out of the ordinary bet,
Spike.
and then that thing happens.
Yeah.
But then the betting companies would say, no, but this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
This person went and put, let me say a crazy number, 5,000 Rand on a specific player who never gets a red card, to get a red card in this specific game or whatever, right? Or this like things like that are picked up because there's algorithms in the background always looking for anomalies.
Yeah.
They have actuaries working in betting companies who look for build engines who look for anomalies. That's why personally I am not worried about match manipulation. I'm not saying that players won't bet. It is possible. However, for you to make enough money out of betting and fixing matches, you have to be throwing in you guys your main sport is cricket and rugby. In cricket, the numbers are astronomical. You would get thousands of people making a crazy bet, and that's how it gets picked up. That's how these Brandon McCullum, for example, you know, the money that they were offering him isn't small money, and then in the grand scheme of things of his career, it's not crazy money, but for the time that he was playing in, it's crazy money. So you need to be doing a lot to make money out of fixing matches, and you will get picked up. My problem is whether the league itself has the rules in place to then
Or the structures
to take action when these things are picked up. And that's my problem. That's what I'm worried about. I'm not worried about match manipulation.
I want us to move to the other sports.
And I'm not sure if I answered the second question.
Yeah,
But I think
sorry. I want us to move to the other sports. And also, please explain to me, because I mean, there's been issues in rugby and in cricket, especially with the free-to-air stuff.
right.
Can you first please, because I think sometimes people get confused by free-to-air.
Yeah.
And I know you've done this extensively. Please, for the people, can you explain what free-to-air means and why there's been such tension between these two broadcasters in South Africa?
Yeah, so simply put, free-to-air broadcasting is broadcasting where the public who views it doesn't have to pay a fee apart from their TV license to watch the content. So if they didn't pay the TV license, they could still watch the content. Whereas pay TV, you can't watch it unless you subscribe and you pay a monthly fee. Those are the two differences. MultiChoice generally buys up all the sports rights. Okay, and it's been happening since the 90s. The first one, I think it started with rugby in '95 World Cup, and then it came cricket, and then came football afterwards as the main major sports. They buy those rights exclusively, and exclusivity means you have rights to both free-to-air and pay TV. So MultiChoice buys up all the rights. Okay. Then, if the SABC wants to broadcast those matches, and we're talking about international rugby matches here or cricket matches, then they have to go to MultiChoice to ask them to get those rights, and it's called a sub-license agreement. MultiChoice will be the licensee. SABC will come underneath as the sub-licensee and broadcast those matches. Our challenge is that when it went to ICASA, and ICASA was asked to deliberate on whether MultiChoice should have and have the ability to just buy up all the rights or not. All of the federations, rugby, football, cricket, went to ICASA and they said, if we don't give MultiChoice exclusivity, our sports will collapse and we will lose our professionalism, because exclusivity guarantees you more money. If you give MultiChoice all of the rights, they pay more money. If you chop them up, MultiChoice will say, well, others have the rights, we're going to pay you a lot less. So therefore, those sports won't be able to generate as much revenue as they do from broadcasting. That's a simple layman's explanation of what's going on with these rights. And it'll continue to be the case until we get to a situation where, and it's starting to happen already. If you looked at some of our videos from the end of last year already, we started already saying that broadcasting is changing. It's because it's already started to happen. There's a case already right now in front of the Competition Commission There's a case in front of the competition tribunal. There's French people coming to take over MultiChoice who may not have an appetite to just buy up all the rights. So it is starting to change, and I foresee that within the next year or so, things will be a little bit different. You've already started to see the SABCs picking up a lot more rights.
Yeah.
They've got all the CAF rights that MultiChoice doesn't have. They probably will broadcast more PSL matches this coming season. They were supposed to broadcast the incoming tour of Ireland this past 3 weeks ago, and they will. I can tell you now. I already put it out on Twitter, but I know for a fact that they will broadcast the outgoing tour if there's no problems at the end of the season. For the Springboks.
So I'm just want to understand. Sorry, Pila, is that why is it then around? I mean, when the rugby is happening, we get these emotional announcements where now we've, unfortunately, between SuperSport and SABC, we could not come to an agreement. Are these decisions happening that late, or maybe now it's PR stuff from maybe one entity trying to save itself?
No, the discussions happen way in advance, because you must remember, and maybe let's, I don't know how much time we have, but maybe let's talk about how broadcasters make money, because that influences when the discussions happen. A broadcaster like SuperSport will play a series of ads during a game, before a game, during a game, and after a game. Throughout that time, you have agreements with all of these people who advertise. And those agreements come in place a while in advance, because there's a rate card that MultiChoice puts out, a rate card that the SABC puts out for advertising during content at specific hours,
Prime
and it changes
times,
during prime time and so on and so on. Those discussions happen way in advance, because you have to have the advert sent to you, the artwork, change it, tweak it, whatever, and then you syndicate it throughout the broadcast of the match. That discussion doesn't take a week. It takes months, because you have to have all of those discussions with all of those potential advertisers. So generally what happens is that when you know that you have sports rights coming up, you'd have a discussion with MultiChoice. Can we get the rights? Yes or no? Cool. You can get the rights, but they will cost you this much. You can't broadcast them on specific channels. This is also another issue that keeps on coming up with MultiChoice. You can't broadcast them live. You can't broadcast them on specific channels, which are streaming platforms, etc. That's the issue that's within the courts right now, or within the competition tribunal. So these discussions, the things that happen last minute and so on, it's unfortunate. It shouldn't be happening that way. You should know literally a month before those games are broadcast who exactly will broadcast them, what time they'll be broadcast on which platforms. They already know that. It's just it comes down to the wire, because they can never agree about where the matches will be broadcast. They will be having discussions in the background. The SABC will try and line up advertisers in the background who are working on these rights. Do you want them, etc., etc., etc. But it always comes down to the wire, because they can never agree on where the games will be broadcast. That's probably the primary issue.
And how much role can the new Minister of Sport play in easing these tensions?
He can't play a role at all.
Is like, nope.
He can't play a role at all.
So because
he can speak,
but I'm saying it's the South African public suffers, or a
Yeah.
certain portion of the South African public suffers when we can't have
Rugby
Auckland
on.
Park providing the.
So let me clarify this one. This is problematic, because again, our ministers love to have, and this is why when the Minister of Sport put out a tweet and he says we're going to go and do this, etc. So I said, cool. You can have a little bit of an influence in terms of what happens with the sporting federations, but you can't go and talk about broadcasting. Because broadcasting is not even in your mandate. That's the mandate of the Minister of Communications. So you can say all you want. If the Minister of Communications doesn't have an appetite or can't change the status quo in terms of broadcasting, it doesn't matter what Gayton says as the minister. He can say all he wants, but it's the mandate of the Minister of Communications. That's who we should be speaking to. And I've never heard the Minister of Communications out in the public talking about what's going to happen with broadcast rights. They come up every now and again when there's a court case or something to that effect. I don't even know whether people know who the Minister of Communications is at the moment.
It used to be Stella and Davini Abrams.
Yeah, it used to be Stella, yes.
Now it's changed
What's
to...
Nqobile and then
So,
he's been moved.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's out of his mandate completely. He can say as much as he wants, but it falls out of his mandate.
Yeah. I wanted to find out about, because of the discussion of these rights and Nons, I know you have to go, so you can go. we'll definitely we'll carry on the discussion. But the sports rights are obviously a sensitive topic, and a lot of people don't understand them, and there's good clarity now between what is free to air and what you pay as a subscription to that. The landscape of broadcasting, as you rightly mentioned, is going to change inevitably in this country, with so many other elements and variables that are coming into play. The takeover is a very interesting one for me. Canal Plus, which is a French broadcasting company, wants to have an outright majority stake in MultiChoice, which obviously has DStv and SuperSport and all of those other entities. There is, though, a ruling in South Africa that a foreign company can't have an outright majority of a South African entity. And
broadcasting.
Yes. So how is that going to work? How are Canal going to work around that? Because that is a South African law that you can't have a foreign company owning a majority of a South African company.
Guys, this is South Africa. There's a will, there's a way. No, so the way that it will work is that they'll dilute. So they will have a local partner.
Yeah.
MultiChoice is already, by the way, almost, 40 something percent owned by Canal Plus anyway.
Yeah.
So they're almost 50%
Yeah.
already. And I think, so as I have it on very good authority that for the past 2 or 3 months, maybe even 4, Dr. Motsepe has already been appointed as the local partner.
Oh, wow.
There will be a local partner. The shareholding will be such that the local partner will have public sway, but
In what capacity, though, is Dr. Motsepe as a local
Does he
partner?
have to step down from CAF?
he would probably have to step down from CAF because that would provide a conflict. Because Canal Plus would then be the largest broadcaster of pay TV content on the continent, who would also be a broadcaster of CAF. He wouldn't be able to hold both roles,
Wow.
so he would have to step down.
Easily, chap.
So in what capacity then?
A local partner. So
As
he's-
just himself
as he can be either by himself
Yeah.
or he could use one of his entities.
Yeah.
There's many ways to skin it, but he essentially they could even bring in more than one local partner if they wanted to. But ultimately they would still, because they're almost already at a majority. Because remember, it's not just MultiChoice who owns this thing.
Yeah.
The PIC owns about, I think, 16%.
Yes.
And then Canal Plus and then MultiChoice Group. So there's other shareholders. So MultiChoice ultimately may not be the majority shareholder. There would be a shareholder nonetheless. You have Canal Plus, who would be the majority, who would be technically the majority shareholder. You've got your local partner.
Yeah.
It's just how you structure the deal. I can't say yet exactly how the deal will be structured.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it will happen, and I think it's a matter of, again, like this one, dot the I's, cross the T's. It's done and dusted, gents.
I want to know the state of South African sport. I mean, we speak about, we've spoken about cricket, Betways. The SA20 is taken off. The cricket team did well in the World Cup, now backing up a semi-final in the 50 over. The women's were in the final a couple of years ago in Cape Town. Rugby, Springboks are doing well. I think the mainstream sports in South Africa are doing fairly well.
Yeah.
When it comes to other sports in South Africa, are we talking about these deals as well, or what is the state of alternative sports in South Africa when it comes to finances?
They're struggling, seriously struggling. And even our mainstream sports, to be honest, they're doing well on the pitch, but they're not shooting the lights out financially speaking.
Wow.
SA Rugby right now is looking for an equity partner, and I reported on this like 3 months ago. They denied it and said it's not done, but we'll see. We'll get a green tick soon. Cricket, SA20 had to happen.
Yes.
If it didn't happen, South African cricket would have been in a really, really difficult space. And even then, financially speaking, they're not yet. They're doing well from an optics point of view, but they're not shooting the lights out in terms of a financial point of view yet. Your other sports are football, as we've just discussed, is going through some changes. Your other sports are really, really struggling. Really, really struggling. They require, boxing for one requires almost all government funding. Tennis has got a great new partner in American Express, so they're doing a little bit better there. Athletics South Africa has been beset by challenges, broadcast issues, etc., etc. I mean, Soweto Marathon had some issues where it wasn't broadcast because there were fights. So there's a lot of struggles in and amongst our smaller sports, but they do have opportunities. You look at your Cape Epic, which is a cycling event. It's sponsored by ABSA. Nedbank Runified and Run Your, and then you've got ABSA, you've got Run Your City series, etc. So there are opportunities when they partner with sponsors specific to specific things. But they have to be able to specify a value and put forward a value proposition to that sponsor. Without that, they will struggle. And I think we're in a point where you might see some fragmentation. Where not every sport will be broadcast on one platform. Some of these sports might go and say, well, we're going to stream our content. You got look at the growth of a SuperSport schools, for instance. It was bought by SuperSport, but that entity on its own could be supported by ads and just live on its own. So we are going into the wild west. We are not going to be, I keep on saying this, we've been spoiled rotten by MultiChoice. The way we consume sport is it will change. It will change. Just finding all the content on one platform is just not going to be possible. The fact that MultiChoice said to the IPL, guys, we can't broadcast you, and then there was a bit of an uproar, it just tells you the rights are getting more expensive. MultiChoice will never be able to pay indefinite amounts, indefinite increases all the time. It's just not happening.
Will that affect how we have and how we enjoy sport negatively or positively with so many of these changes that could possibly come? I mean, broadcast rights are such an important thing that, like you say, we've been so fortunate for a very long time that we've enjoyed countless sporting codes on one platform. Does the change impact them positively or negatively?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Ultimately, the rights holders, the sports teams and federations and stuff like that have a lot of work to do to keep you as a viewer on that platform and watching the content. So they have a lot of work to do in terms of marketing the product and getting you excited to watch it. They have to treat sport as a product. That's why Dr. Khoza mentioned they're in the business of entertainment and doing content. So that will be a major thing for them, but your ability to watch sport will still be there. It's just you will have to find different ways of watching it. MultiChoice, I think, will try to become an aggregator of content, where they try to have a Netflix and a Disney and this and a that and a that, where you can kind of go to one place and watch it. But that model is also struggling in other parts of the world. I don't have a
straight answer.
I don't have a straight answer for you there. I think the public will have to, if you want to watch sport and you have a love for it, you'll try to find a way to watch it. It's not always going to be straightforward. You might have to get a streaming link here, pay-per-view here for that or whatever. But and it's not to say it will happen overnight. It will take a bit of time.
And the reason I ask also would be, it's because, I mean, that says to me it kind of seems like we're heading to how the UK does it in terms of where you find certain content pieces. So like the Premier League is, you can only find certain games on certain platforms. I know for example, Sky and BBC share some cricket content, whether it's the 100, it's test matches, it's one day internationals, it's women's, it's that. there's a lot of content pieces that they share between Sky and BBC in the UK, and a lot of the public sentiment there is that it becomes very difficult at some point where you have maybe £30 for that, and you're paying £24 for that, 100 for that, and cumulatively it becomes a bit of a hindrance on your pocket that you have to pay for so many things. Some of them are free on BBC, but cumulatively
But
becomes a bit of a hindrance.
this is why MultiChoice was such great value, right?
Yeah,
You know, as much as people may talk, you like, the value is insane.
yeah,
It's actually crazy. So yeah, it's possible. We are heading into uncharted territory for most South Africans. We've had DStv since 90. I mean, Koos Beck has started it in.
man, I don't even remember.
1994.
Yeah,
We've had the best of the best, probably in the world,
in democratic South
in
Africa.
democratic South Africa for our entire lives.
Yeah, we are Tinswalos of
but we must
MultiChoice.
take a leaf from the rest of the continent.
Yeah,
If you go out into the rest of the continent where DStv isn't as ubiquitous,
yeah,
you would watch content on Star Times.
yeah,
Some people would have a Star Times decoder. I have a friend of mine in Uganda,
Yeah.
and we talk all the time.
Yeah.
And he says to me, "Dude, I have a Canal Plus decoder.
Yeah.
Canal Plus just launched. I have a Star Times decoder.
Yeah.
I have a MultiChoice decoder. And then if I want to watch other things that I can't watch, I have to
stream.
either stream or I can't watch it,
Yo,
you know, or I get DAZN or something. But he literally switches between these things. And
all in one house.
all in one house. But I think eventually you'll get to a point where it will be all in one app, in multiple apps.
Yeah,
And you have individual subscriptions for this, that, and the other.
yeah.
But I mean, the models are changing all over the world as well. They move from aggregator where everything is in one place, and then they split it.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, the way that consumption of content is changing for you, for us to be sitting here in a room and creating content for ourselves.
Yeah.
When you
It's
were
gotta
growing
live
up, you
somewhere.
could only get content on TV.
Yeah.
You know, now, and people can watch it on their phones. You can put out a whole episode on Twitter.
Yeah.
You can put out a whole episode on TikTok.
Yeah.
The way people watch content is changing,
Yeah,
and the way people watch sports content is changing.
Yeah.
You just have to figure out what your lane is in terms
Yeah.
of what you're comfortable with doing, and do that. The problem, though, is that the ones who sort of aggregate all the content in one place have a problem.
Yeah.
Because they can't serve every single thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So they even then they're trying to sort of diversify.
Yeah.
MultiChoice has Showmax. SABC has SABC Plus.
Yeah.
You know? They have to try and find you where you are.
Yeah.
In the past, you had to go to them because the TV was
Was
plugged
there.
into the wall. You know?
And there's no other way that you could watch anything if you, besides sitting in front of the TV and watching it. I want to ask about rugby as well. I mean, you mentioned something that was so important about an equity partner that SA Rugby is obviously now sort of done and dusted with it, but
I wouldn't say done and dusted.
it's somewhere near there. Somewhere near there.
Mark Alexander will sue me. No, so it's been in the works for quite some time.
Yeah.
It's been in the work for months. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, I don't know why it hasn't been announced. It's been, I think, maybe some dotting the I's, crossing some T's, making sure that everybody's comfortable. Because again, you have to take it to all of the unions and make sure that they're happy, and there's always content station there, because there isn't a unified stance amongst all the unions as to whether they're happy with equity funding.
Yeah.
But I mean, New Zealand's done it, and they've done it pretty well.
Yeah.
They've even renewed it for a second sort of stint.
Yeah.
So yeah, it happens. But yeah, to answer you, and I kind of stopped you on the way, but it is coming, and I would not be surprised. I gave it a date, but you know, it's just dragged on. I don't know why it's still dragging.
A part of it, because I wanted to ask, because a part of the question was also about SA Rugby. Even though the Springboks won back-to-back World Cups now, financially still not a perilous situation, but it's not always steady. You know, I think they announced like about a month or two ago that they've lost about maybe 6 million or so. I'm not sure of the certain of the amount for certain, but like you were saying, on the pitch, it doesn't always reflect on the books that you're doing well. The money that they get from winning these World Cups isn't as significant as people think, and think that rugby is in a healthy state financially. Those losses, can they be made up with equity partnerships, like impending equity partnerships like this?
Yeah, the equity partnerships help because they pump money in directly. They're not waiting for. So as part of the deal, you would get an upfront injection of cash. Yeah. Right. And then those equity partners would have the job of going out and generating even more revenue for you, so that everybody benefits. That's how the partnership works. Yeah. It's not just they come in, they dump money, and then they just sit and then just take up whatever comes out. Yeah. So they'll have a share of. So what will happen with SA Rugby is that SA Rugby will form a joint venture, a joint company between them and the equity partner. Yeah. SA Rugby will have the majority share of this new company. Yeah. This new company's job, on the one side, the equity partner will pump money directly into SA Rugby, but this new partnership will have to go out into the market and try and generate more revenue, either through partnerships and agreements, sponsorships, and so on and so on, to drive into this new vehicle. Yeah. And then there will be a share. They will share whatever money comes out
revenue
of it.
From it. Yeah.
So the thinking will be that it will increase the total revenue pot. Obviously, the equity partner will benefit, and SA Rugby will benefit as well. But ultimately speaking, the biggest challenge for SA Rugby and Cricket South Africa particularly is that we make most of our money from incoming tours. Yeah. So British and Irish Lions tour, the current tour with the Welsh, if New Zealand were to come here, etc., which is why they're trying to revive the bilateral tours between the Springboks and the All Blacks, etc. So very similar in cricket. When we leave the country, it costs us money. Yeah. When we come, India coming into the country makes us a lot more money. So we are reliant on those tours. Yeah. The more they can happen, the better. Yeah. Which is why for us, cricket and Test cricket going in the direction where it's going, with England, India, Australia kind of ruling the roost in terms of the number of matches and diminishing the number of matches that we get is hugely problematic for us, because it reduces the number of incoming tours that we have, and thereby reduces the amount of. So the way that we make that money from incoming tours is that those broadcasters in those countries want to broadcast those matches. We can charge more money. Yeah. We then earn in dollars and rupees and pounds. Yeah. It increases the pot. Yeah. But because those tours, the British and Irish Lions tour, only happens once every 4 years. India and Australia and England kind of play amongst each other. They don't come here. It reduces the amount of money that we can generate. Yeah. So equity partners are great, but it would be even better if we could play a lot more bilateral matches. Yeah. And but I mean, players can only play so much sport. Yeah. So
I'm gonna come to the cricket part, but I just want to finish this rugby part, because I mean, SA Rugby will have its own sort of equity partner, but the franchises also have their own equity partners. I know Western Province Rugby is in the process, if it's done. Not finalized.
It's fine. It's finalized, yeah.
Sharks Rugby also have their own equity partnership. How do these speak to each other? Is it now a case of Western Province benefiting from whatever they were able to bring in, Sharks benefiting from whatever they brought in, but still benefiting from whatever SA Rugby is going to give them as well?
Yeah. So the top structure is SA Rugby. Yeah. Right. Functions as a top structure, which the franchises then feed into, which the unions then feed into the franchises, and so on. Now, the unions and the franchises are self-sustaining still. They still need to be able to balance their own books. They have their own stadiums, they have their own communities, and their own. Because if you look at how SA Rugby in South Africa is structured, you have SA Rugby at the top, and then you've got your Bulls, Sharks, Western Province, Lions, and who else am I? Cheetahs. Yeah. And then underneath those, you have the regions and the unions. Yeah. So feeding into the Bulls would be your entire
Limpopo,
etc. Feeding into the Lions would be all of your Gauteng,
Yeah.
feeding into the Sharks, etc.
Yeah.
Natal, etc. etc. So they'll all feed into the
Amateur
into the
rugby
unions.
pe-
Amateur
pe-
rugby
yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
But for those amateur rugby structures to be functional, they have a standalone union.
Yeah.
The franchises who then go and represent the Sharks or whatever is just the team that they pick out of that. But they still need to be self-sustaining.
So it's the professional
So
arm
it's the
and
professional,
the
exactly,
amateur.
exactly.
Yeah.
So even for them, they still have to make their own financial decisions, which impact the way that they work. Which is why the Western Province, if you look at and we put out a video about it a while ago about how the sale happened, how they had to sell the stadium, etc., etc. It was a painful exercise. They went down the road of being offered equity investment. They then put up the stadium and other buildings, as part of a loan. They got money from it. It was a messy situation, but they were essentially trying to do the same thing without bringing in an equity partner. Whereas an equity partner pumps in cash, they went the loan route and then they put the house up for sale as part of the loan. It backfired badly, and they found themselves having to move into a DHL stadium, which they're now renting. And whereas you owned a stadium in the past, and the stadium is now being
The
broken
grass
down
is like
and-
this high
well,
now.
it's
at
been
Newlands.
broken down and it's going to be turned into a multi-use commercial facility.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a different way. It's fun now. You can go and buy a car cash, or you can go and buy it in a loan.
Yeah.
Or Marco Tendlini will say, "I know, Chief. I'll throw in 50,000
Yeah.
towards this thing
car,
of buying
yeah,
a car."
yeah.
It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Western Province, instead of Umakoti, they went to Mashonis. And Mashonis wati amadoda. It's exactly the same thing.
It's so painful because I mean,
And I hope that and this is the way I like to try and sort of break down these financial matters. They seem complicated to general people, but if you look at it as in layman's terms like that, Western Province went to a loan shark. They went the loan route. They put up the house and they got burned. So that's it's simple as that. And I'm not calling banks
I
loan
know,
sharks. but
I know. I mean, there were so many. Like I followed that quite a lot, and you looked at it and you thought, but how are you putting up the house for sale when you don't have a guarantee of the outcome of what is going to happen when you put up Newlands, which has been there for over 100 years?
The crazy thing about Western Province even is that the loan that they were getting was worth less than the total value of the properties that they put up, which is unbelievable.
What kind of accounting was that?
Hey, Chief, I don't know. Hey? I don't know, but it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it wasn't only one loan. They took two loans. There was I'll have to remember correctly, but I think there was Remgrow.
Yeah.
That they went
Investec.
into Investec was the second one, I think, and then they refused to pay for the initial loan, and then the bank went and attached the building, and then they went and took another loan to cover the first loan.
My goodness.
and then ultimately they went and then SA Rugby said, "Aye, guys, you're moving mad here. We're taking this thing away. We're putting you guys into administration, and we'll go and find you an equity partner." Now the owner of Capitec and his equity group is essentially in charge of Western Province Rugby. Hopefully moving forward, because they've got the financial backing essentially of Capitec and the guys who own PG Glass, they will be more steady. But yeah, it was whatever happened with
Very strange.
Yeah, it was a crazy situation.
Going back to cricket, and I know it's difficult sometimes to even explain these things to people. The ICC themselves are obviously the mother body of cricket, and then they obviously have a revenue sharing module.
Yeah.
Which
With the countries.
which a large part of it sits in one country. And then the rest of the affiliates share whatever's left of it. I mean, 38% of it belongs to India alone, and then the rest,
BCCI.
and then the rest, sort of filters into the other ones. Do you find that problematic, or is it a fair sort of split of the ICC revenue because of what the BCCI has in terms of financial strength with their numbers, sheer numbers, and the broadcast rights that they're able to sort of sell and buy?
The BCCI and cricket issue is problematic. Firstly, I think the ICC have abdicated their responsibility in terms of managing the game of cricket as a whole. They are now essentially a financial generating entity that survives off the funds of the BCCI. They no longer manage sport. They are caretakers of cricket.
Yeah.
And the BCCI in England essentially run cricket, with the BCCI calling the shots.
Yeah.
Whether it's so in other sports, like let's say for instance, if you look at the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, pulls revenue and resources together from all their top partners, and then they make decisions. FIFA the same. You have people who have influence, but you don't have an individual country
outright
that kind of says, this is where we are going, this is how much money we will be paid, and the rest will be paid this is where we want to play a specific games in the World Cup, and the rest must, and we will pick the pitches, and we will suit. It's literally you basically give them a World Cup on a silver platter. It ends up being like this, where the country's just got too much influence. And for the good of the global game and the growth of the global game, you can't have one entity who is too powerful. Yes, we understand that cricket is a bigger sport in India than in any other country. But it can't be, you know how in football there's no player who is bigger than the coach and bigger than the team. England is bigger than the team, bigger than the coach, bigger than the federation. If it's unsustainable for cricket to continue to go this way, because ultimately you'll just get India winning everything. Their best players are Indian. Cool, yes, we understand they're passionate about cricket, but in the 90s and the 80s, when the ICC actually ran cricket, it was much more equal. You get Kenya all of a sudden coming up, pitching up at World Cups and doing well with Steve Tikolo and
Thomas
and
Obuya,
and of the world. Now they've it's just not the same. In as much as they could say, we've got you in Nepals and all of that who are coming up, etc., etc. Yeah, the IPL fundamentally changed the game, and I think that the ICC got money drunk with the IPL, and it's just they lost their way a bit. It's a personal opinion.
And also, I mean, it's a huge revenue generator, the IPL itself, and for it to even demand a window of itself, I mean, 6 weeks in an international calendar, which is already truncated because of the volume of cricket and the volume of leagues that are just popping around, because every country now wants to have its own league because they need to generate the money that they're possibly missing out from having.
You can't function without a domestic league.
Flagship league. So can we see a picture in the future where the IPL is probably the only league that we can see from an international point of view, and then everything else is inconsequential?
Yeah, I mean, you've already started to see a watering down of some of the international leagues. The 100 had some challenges. SA20 is very new. I don't know if there's as much excitement about Big Bash anymore as there was when it first started. And the fact that everyone is starting a league of their own, because they realize that without these sort of global T20 leagues, you can't, your finances just go nowhere. And this is why I was saying that having India so powerful and the IPL so powerful essentially dilutes the value in everything else. And I don't have a crystal ball to say whether the IPL will be the only league, but I don't see that these other leagues will be able to survive and to generate the type of revenue that they hope to generate. To get as big as the IPL, for one, you need the audience, and you need people to be watching it, and the cricket to be that exciting. The IPL's global rights are now the second most expensive global rights per match in the world for a sport.
Any sporting coach.
Any sport. I think they're second behind the NFL. So it's getting so expensive to just broadcast the IPL.
Yeah.
That's why you'll see, I'm very sure there's going to be a tipping point where people are going to be saying, no, guys, we can't do this. It's too much money.
Yeah.
And even the franchises won't be able to pay the types of fees because the fees will just keep on going up and up and up.
Yeah.
You know, even now, I think you're not seeing the types of figures that were thrown around for Chris Morris, just being banded about everywhere because the IPL's just got so much money.
Yeah.
At a point, it'll reach a saturation point where it's just too much.
Yeah.
And cricket will have to right itself and fix itself.
Yeah.
All of the other countries who are starting up leagues all over the place, they won't all be able to survive.
Yeah.
So I won't be surprised if you see a global T20 league, almost like how you see a Champions League type of format where the best of certain regions or whatever play against each other, and sort of like a mini global tournament. But then what's the difference between that and a World Cup? You know? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's because also the other problem for cricket is that you don't get players only playing in Europe.
Yeah.
You know, you've got Abo KG Rabada playing in the US, in India
for the same franchise.
Yeah. You know, so what's to stop you having a global franchise league? But then it all becomes IPL teams. They've done very well in doing that. In saying we won't have Indian players going to play in other leagues,
but we'll start
we will start franchises in other countries. I wouldn't be surprised then it becomes just one big IPL.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm just trying to look at the permutations in my head now, and it's all over the place.
You just mentioned the 100. That's an interesting topic also because they're also sort of re-looking at how they can bring in money to absolutely sustain.
They even mentioned that they might bring in an IPL-ish element.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
So it becomes these things become now money decisions instead of cricket decisions.
Yeah.
Do you see that also being a huge influence of how younger kids go into the sport, looking at the financial element of it and not just the enjoyment of I'm bowling 140 Ks, this is my dream, I want to play for South Africa, I want to play for England, India, Australia, whatever.
Yeah.
Now they think I need to do well because there's an IPL contract for grabs.
Yeah, cricket has, as I said, my initial statement when we started talking about cricket, I said the ICC has abdicated its responsibility of managing the game of cricket.
Yeah.
It's the Wild West in cricket. Test cricket, which is the original form of the game, is disappearing and it's dying. ODI cricket is also very much at risk.
Yeah.
Because again, how do you justify you're going to pay your player in the case of an IPL or an SA20 in the region of 8 million to play 6 matches, pays it's like $1 million and a half or even more per match.
Game.
He leaves, he goes off and plays another match, another league, he plays maybe 6 or so matches. He's done for the year. He doesn't have to play anymore. He's done in the first 3 months of the year, financially speaking, he's made more money than he would have made playing for his international country.
Yeah.
For your domestic franchise. You don't even have to play domestic franchise cricket. The moment you get you pique the interest of a franchise that plays an international T20 competition. Yeah. You don't even have to play for your international country anymore. And the money that you would get from your international country, where you have to go on these long tours for 3 months to the West Indies or whatever, and you're going to sit on the bench, what's the point? So I can definitely see a time where players are just like, well, what's the point? I may as well just play T20 cricket. It's already happening now. I have a chart where between 1990, where they looked at the number of T20 matches versus test matches. In the past, it was mostly test cricket, then ODI cricket, and then almost nothing of T20. Now it's more than 60% T20, like 2020 ODI and test.
Whoa.
And there's no incentive for you to want to play test cricket Why are you going to go and play a match for 5 days?
Yeah.
You could play 2 T20 matches in that time and make more than double the amount of money that you make in a
week.
test. Why would you do it?
And,
It just doesn't make financial sense.
and players are essentially now rejecting national contracts.
Why do you need a national
freelancer
contract
route.
for? Because you're literally a freelancer.
Yeah.
And there's no need for you to be playing test cricket. And this is why I'm saying ODI cricket, even it's in and of itself. I don't know. The value proposition of an ODI match is that it's one day. You finish you do your 50 overs.
Yeah.
It's a good day out for the family.
Yeah.
But audiences also are like, Chief, you're
It's too long.
An entire day versus give me 4
too
hours.
long.
I'll take the 4 hours. It's just as much action. You get maybe a super over.
Yeah.
It's quicker, in and out.
Man.
You know, just the economics, even from a broadcast point of view.
Yeah.
Broadcasting an entire day, the costs are not the same.
Yeah.
You know, so it's cricket is literally in an existential crisis at the moment where Agwaziyo. You know that Julius Malema, they just leave it to Jesus. They don't know what's going on. They just leave it to God. They don't know what's happening tomorrow. Cricket is almost in that state right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the ICC has a big job to do to try and rein things back in and sort of formalize like what is happening in T20 cricket, how much T20 cricket is being played, how much ODI cricket is being played, how much test cricket. Do you want to keep test cricket? Do you want to keep ODI cricket? Just it needs to be reined in because it's all over the place, and T20 cricket is just blowing everything out the water. So
let's go back to the rights discussion. And I know there's been a couple of cuts in terms of the budgets from a MultiChoice Supersport particularly now with the potential takeover and how much money they're spending on certain content pieces. We know now they're cutting back a lot on the football to just keep the rights and the other sort of smaller competitions that they do sponsor in football. But the sustainability of Supersport in the past sort of 5 years now, when you look back at it, is it a case of them sort of chasing the evolution of how sport is being viewed and how they need to catch up from a digital point of view, where now things are going very much more digital than they are analog, where you see less and less of physical decoders and more onto the DStv stream. And how has that affected them financially over the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, so MultiChoice has had a couple of big challenges. First and foremost is that the world of the consumer has changed. Life has gotten more difficult. The economy of South Africa has been, or the continental economy has struggled. So things from a financial point of view and from an affordability point of view are more difficult for consumers. So consumers have to make more choices. Sports rights have also increased at a rate that's higher, I think, than anyone could have anticipated. So the cost of getting those sports rights has increased. And by all intents and purposes, everybody knows that sports kind of subsidizes the DStv bouquet, where you subsidizes your other content. But MultiChoice always had a model where you could watch everything in one place. And you're also at a point where you're competing with other content providers. There's Netflix, Disney, Amazon, etc., etc. So you have almost a perfect storm around this business, which has tried to offer DStv Compact, access and so on and cut up its packages to try and appeal to people. But then people see that, but there's an access. Why do I need to pay for the whole thing? So then a lot of them start dropping from the top. And they come further and further and further down. So again, can they afford to stay and just keep one package? They can't, because people will say, but it's too expensive. We can't afford it. And then when they offer cheaper packages, people start dropping the more expensive package, which makes them the most money. So you're always you're always chasing your tail. Because you're trying to figure out something that provides value. But also at the same time, people are saying, but Netflix is 60 something rand a month.
But Netflix doesn't have football, doesn't have rugby, doesn't have
Exactly.
cricket.
But then also at the same time, people are like, but we can't afford. We want a cheaper PSL package.
Yeah.
And then MultiChoice puts out an EPL package on Showmax,
Yeah.
which is 69 Rand to watch Showmax.
Yeah.
But then, you keep on almost diluting. You've taken a product which is a price. It's diluted and diluted and diluted and diluted. And at the same time, there's all of these international players saying, but we've got a better product than these guys, and offering them that.
Yeah.
So all is at the same time, you're fighting a perfect storm.
Yeah.
Which is why I said earlier that MultiChoice, we've been spoiled for choice. It's been a great run, but this model is really it's seriously under threat.
Yeah.
Not just from domestically, but internationally.
Yeah.
It's just a very difficult situation to be a MultiChoice right now. So they've tried it. They've tried everything, Stream, Showmax, in almost to a point where it's like, but which one is which?
Yeah.
It's almost difficult to see what the true business,
Trajectory
true
is.
MultiChoice is or was anymore.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
The importance of having a strong SABC, how important is that? Because you obviously have the big player in MultiChoice, always having these exclusivity in terms of rights, but the strength of SABC from an audience perspective, how important is that for it to be sustainable, to be strong, to not only provide the content that people want at a far affordable rate, but also create jobs for people?
So the SABC is hugely important.
Yeah.
You don't get sports fans unless people can see sport. Nowadays, a lot less kids watch compete in sport because it's been removed and I think this is one thing that the minister can definitely influence is the extent to which kids are playing sport at school. But be that as it may, that's another issue. The SABC is hugely important because the exposure of sport generates sports fans.
Yeah.
My experience of sport, my first experience of sport was watching it on TV, watching Peter Ndlovu on. I was born in Zim.
Yeah.
The only time we could watch sport was on a weekend, and there was one person on the street with a TV.
Yeah,
and they
you
would
all
broadcast
congregate.
the Barclays game there, and it would be one game a week, and we would all be watching for Coventry City because Peter Ndlovu was playing. He's the only Zimbabwean playing in the Premier League. But I was like, what? There's a Zimbabwean playing there. He's playing against who? That's how you nurture it.
Yeah.
So and this is why the conversation around having sports of national interest like rugby and so on is so important on the SABC, is because we have a swath of people who can't afford a MultiChoice, right? So it's important to have a strong SABC for them to be able to compete for rights, because they have to pay for those rights. Just because it says free to air doesn't mean
they
that
get
they're
it for free.
for them to broadcast. So they have to pay for those rights. So the SABC being strong and able to compete for rights and able to broadcast content, sports content that maybe would not be able to live on a MultiChoice. And the SABC's importance in generating interest in sports cannot be overstated. They're hugely important. So I think I understand the ministry saying we want to fight, etc., etc., etc. But then the ministries have to speak and work in unison towards the objective of saying we want to get more sport on free to air, so that many more people are able to watch it. If you go to the Olympics now, for instance, as an example, the SABC I think will be broadcasting the Olympics, but do they have the ability to broadcast every single piece of content? How large is the bouquet? Where will they put the content? There's only SABC Sport, and I think SABC 1, 2, and 3, and 4. MultiChoice has 20 something channels where they can put sport on. So the SABC has to get stronger, and SABC Plus should grow again to just allow those who don't have the ability to watch, because sport is for all. It shouldn't just be for those who can afford to watch it, to pay to watch it.
I wish I had a lot more questions, but I'm good. I think I'm covered. I think we're covered.
Yeah.
Just finally then, Nqobile, because I mean, there's a lot of why we bring people here to try and explain things that we can't explain. Is because we want them to get the full picture educationally. The landscape of just sport in general, where do you see it? Not only from a financial point of view, but also just it growing here in South Africa. And we did mention and we did ask about the sort of the smaller sporting codes in South Africa. How can they grow so that we're seeing more and more stars emerge from this country?
Yeah, my biggest thing that I've sort of been advocating for the last few years is that we need to increase sports participation at school level. I don't know if you would have seen, I think a couple of years ago, we put out a series of tweets about sport participation and how less than 10% of our public schools has had an active school sports program.
Yep.
We are going towards for you to see athletes playing sport, they need to be exposed to it from a young age.
Yeah.
So the state of our sports, you're getting to a point where you have sporting codes that have to recycle players.
Yeah.
Rugby is almost an outlier because the rugby infrastructure is very strong in terms of nurturing talent. But even then, they still need to reach a wider swath of the public. But be that as it may, rugby is almost an outlier.
Yeah.
But sports like football, cricket, etc., and your other sports, which are not mandatory sports, where you don't have that many schools who specialize in those sports. Like your Grey College, you know for sure you're getting 100 rugby boys who just want to go and play rugby. You know what I mean? It's very different.
Yeah.
So within the country, and we're looking holistically, we need to ensure that we get a lot more kids playing sport, just as a base. Give them the facilities, the ability, the time, etc. Just make them play.
Yeah.
At the same time, we have a lot of very large stadiums. We have a situation where we have a lot of stadiums which look half full, half not even half full, half empty most of the time. Because we haven't built and nurtured this culture of going into stadiums, but also at the same time it doesn't help that we built all of these giant stadiums for the World Cup and we just assumed that everyone would go. So we need to I think there's a lot of work that started to happen in as far as marketing of sport and trying to get a lot more people excited about sport and watching sport because they understand it's content. It's content creation. The sport that happens for 90 minutes is just by the way, but there has to be content creation around the sport itself to generate interest and so on. And once you have those right, you have interest, you have participation, then you can link in sponsors because sponsors just want access to people. Sponsors want access to viewers, broadcasters want access to viewers, then the ecosystem is healthier. But we need to make sure that we've got a lot more kids playing and we are selling sport to them the entire time. Then everything else will, in and of itself, it's almost like nature. You plant a seed in a kid, you germinate, you keep on pruning and so on. Do that to millions of kids. The ecosystem will take care of itself.
I saw a stat somewhere, and this is the final point. I mean, I saw a stat somewhere about the percentage of schools and kids that have physical education in their curriculum is very, very small. Like I mean, I grew up in a school where there was a dedicated time in a day or a week. I mean, I think it was twice a week that we had physical education where you had to take off all your uniform, get into physical training shorts. You're there, active on the field. You're playing either it's hockey or whatever that we had as a curriculum in place at the school, and most of the schools don't have that.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, there's a report coming out. It was supposed to come out in May. It's called the EPG report, which is what I sort of quoted from earlier. And the last time that report came out was in 2020. So it's almost 4 years ago. That EPG report is a report that's put together by government, which tracks sports participation. It tracks transformation in sport. and it tracks how many. So within that, one of the things that they do track is, which is why I said earlier, in 2019 already, where we had less than 10% of our school sports, public schools having an actual school sports program. That was the state then. I would think that it's probably gotten worse now because it can only regress. So the number of it, what that does is that it leads to us producing less kids who play sport.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the stat that you saw now, I don't know exactly what the stat was, but it wouldn't be wrong. It wouldn't be wrong.
Sure.
And this is why when I put out that tweet initially, this is almost 4 years ago, I put it out because we were going to an Olympics. We had just come back from an Olympics, if I remember correctly. This was probably the first time I went viral on a thread. Was we would come back from an Olympics, and I said, you see this picture here where there's more white kids playing sport and participating at the Olympics? It's not by mistake. These kids get there in spite of and not because of the system.
Yes.
We need to get there because of the system, because we want to do it intentionally. Sport has so many more benefits than just kids on TV. You know, some of us still play sport now. These guys breaking their fingers and their knees and whatnot.
I've got half an Achilles.
I've got
half an Achilles.
Almost 30 what and still, you know, because we love it from a young age, and we want that to continue. But if you don't start it when they're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, it'll never happen.
Nqobile, thanks for your time. Cash in Sport. Please follow him on all social platforms, right?
Every social media platform, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, CASHN Sport without I. Okay. That's the handle.
Please follow, and of course you can keep up to date with all the financial part about sport, the business part about sport. We can only give you about what is the result and how they got to the result and how the players came up. But the most important thing is how players get paid, but also how people can make a living from sport. So please follow my brother Cash in Sport. And thank you.
And please, bring us a sponsor so we can get this guy some more pedicures. Look at these glistening nails.
Please cut. But anyway, thank you so much. Please also like, subscribe onto our social platforms. We're also on Apple Podcasts. We are also on Spotify Podcasts, and of course on YouTube with our name as the All Rounders SA, right? So, thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.